Welcome back, adventurers, to Prime Arcana, the Scourge Garden Saga. In Chapter 0.3 of the Origins arc, we met Skogul Wildstone, an exiled Frost Goliath Ranger. After surviving a deadly caribou hunt, accepting the kindness of hermits, and hunting down a pack of ice wolves, Skogul discovered an ancient vault hidden in the wolves' den, protected by Automaton guards. Now, we continue his journey in Chapter 0.5, Wild. Skogul kneels beside the makeshift grave, his breath slow and even in the frigid night air. What's left of the wolf pack, now stripped of their pelts and meat, is marked only by loose stones gathered from the cave entrance. So, Steve, or Skogul, does he say anything for the wolves? Or any prayers to the gods?
He places a final sort of token on top of the grave, and he leans in deeply, and he nods his head downward, and he goes, "Sleep well."
Nearby, a fire crackles softly and casts shadows that dance along the rim of the cave entrance. 6 beautiful pelts hang nearby, on frost pines to dry in the sharp cold. He knows they'll fetch a good price at any local market. Walking past the pelts, he double-checks how secure the hammock filled with raw wolf meat is. Blood leaks through the leathers, dripping down silently to create a pattern of red droplets on the snow below. The meat is enough to keep him well fed until he's able to return to civilization. A second hammock, set a few feet from the fire, sways gently, empty, and when his eyes fall upon it, Skogul's bones feel heavier than they should. The night is quiet, but there's a strange hum in the air, almost like the faint whir of gears turning deep underground. Or perhaps it's just your mind playing tricks on you, the product of too many hours spent in the cold wilderness, alone. When a lone, mournful, pained howl tears through the night somewhere off in the distance, Skogul hears the voice of his aunt in his ear. "The cold does not care for the weak, boy. Either take what you want, or the cold will take it from you." For now, though, there's only the fire, the stars, and the stillness of the dead wolves buried underneath your feet. So, how does Skogul prepare to hunker down and rest for the night?
He definitely has some, a mild sense of anxiety that one of the wolves made it out alive, but he also knows that that wolf saw what he did to the rest of the pack. So I think he's kind of giving himself the room to choose a slumber. Skogul, knowing that, his work has been kind of met, he feels a sense of accomplishment, and he makes his way up into the tree to get some slumber.
And as he climbs into the hammock, what are his thoughts about what he found in the cave?
The sense of him hearing things underneath the wind is really driven by the fact that he saw living monstrosities that shouldn't draw life. He's comforted by the simple fact that the snow is what he expects and the cold is what he expects, and it's almost simply what's within the mountain that he doesn't expect. So in a way, because it's not near and it didn't follow him, he actually kind of feels, a sense of peace. He ultimately thinks that the fact that the machines, or I guess what language can we use to describe them? I guess mechanical. We know that word. Mechanical makes sense. The mechanical monstrosities, he feels a sense of relief that they didn't follow him, and that gives him a sense of peace. So he's able to sleep, I feel like, pretty well, knowing that he's still in the wild.
Okay. And as he, sort of bundles up in the hammock, swaying there, he, stares down into the crackling fire on the ground beneath him. Go ahead and roll a perception for me.
All right. Yeah, and that was a natural 20. It says, wait, no, it isn't though. It says
It's
2020.
it's not a natural 20, but it is a 20.
Okay.
From the corner of his eye, he catches a brief glint, barely noticeable amidst the shifting light and flames. It's bouncing off something in the snow just sort of beyond the cave entrance.
I guess, can you tell us if it's moving or not?
It is not moving.
It kind of nags at him once he sees it, and he decides to dismount from his climb to go check it out.
Okay. It becomes more clear the closer you get that the old rusted blade sticks up awkwardly from the snow with a cracked and worn handle. The elf's skeletal remains are scattered across the ground, long since forgotten. Most of the skeleton is twisted, splayed in pieces. A hollow rib cage picked clean. One arm is entirely gone, while the bones of the other stretches towards the cave entrance, hand still clutching a rusted shield. The metal is dull and corroded by time, unusable. The skull's hollow eye sockets are turned upward towards the shiver veil, forever locked in frozen terror. Go ahead and roll an insight for me.
Yeah, right? 5 plus 4, 9.
It's hard for you to tell exactly how the elf ultimately ended up failing in his task, but it's clear that he didn't stand a chance. But due to his weapons, it's likely that he wasn't a normal person. He was probably an adventurer. Go ahead and roll a perception for me.
10 plus 4, 14.
A torn pouch rests on the ground amidst the elven remains. When you brush away the frost, you see that it's made from brittle, weathered leather.
Yeah, I think he'll pick it up and try and understand what he can about this unfortunate fellow.
The pouch is light, but something inside shifts, small, and he kind of hears a little metallic, like, clink.
Yeah, so Skogul opens the little pouch.
Without warning, a snap in the trees breaks his silence.
What the fuck was that?
Roll perception for me.
13.
There's nothing but the cold and the dark.
Yeah, he doesn't like that. I would like to lunge into the trees.
Into the trees or the hammock? I'm just being curious.
Trees, not
Okay.
the hammock. He doesn't want to lay down when he hears shit.
Okay, go ahead and roll an athletics for me.
13.
Okay. He very easily gets up into the trees. You know, these are the same trees that he basically, like, conducted that extended piece of guerrilla warfare against those wolves. So he knows these trees well. He's basically spent the last 18 hours in them. They're very thick, they're very dense, and they're still all covered in frost and snow. And as he's, sitting up in the trees, he is listening to the sound of nature. And there is nothing.
There's nothing. So can I roll a perception check to see if that sound was made by anything living?
100% you can.
All right. 16.
Roughly about 100 yards to your east, you see a buck deer. He kind of steps into a bit of a small clearing where the moonlight pours down at him, and you hear him kind of and then stomps his ground and cracks another fucking stick, and he keeps walking.
Is he walking with purpose or intention to somewhere?
Just moving through the woods.
All right.
This, up until 90 minutes ago, was an area that smelled like wolves to him. And now there are no wolves here. So he came to sort of investigate and see particularly what changed. He means you no harm.
Yeah, so Skogul hops out of the tree and he gets back to taking a look at that pouch.
Inside the pouch, you might have expected to find some coin, but instead are two small, intricately engraved medallions that slip into your palm. The metal is cold, but unlike the sword or armor on the snowy ground, it's well preserved, undamaged by the decay of time. Go ahead and roll an insight for me.
16.
Turning the medallion over in your hand, you definitely recognize that there are sort of these druidic markings that resemble the ones in Orlin Ross's cabin.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So it's not just the medallion in the pouch. As you pull out the thin, flat stone, you see carved into it are the words, Silver Scourge. The healer Orlin. Last chance to recover. The words are in a language that you struggle to read, yet also somehow understand. It is not Giantine.
He's pretty curious. He takes a look at both and is almost wondering if the medallion had something to do with it or whether or not this was unrelated. But in the sense that he's gaining, he's wondering if it might be some form of payment. And he's also wondering if maybe Orlin also sent this elf to try and kill the wolves as well. These thoughts are going through his head as he pockets them.
Okay.
I think at this point, wait, did that elf have any weapons on it that were valuable or anything to trade or anything like that?
Nothing useful. The weapons have weather damage from the snow and time. They're rusted and old. The shield is a common buckler shield. The sword is a regular short sword, no different than the one that you have, but rusty and worn. And the armor that he has has sort of been broken into like little pieces. And since you're not an armorer, you wouldn't really know particularly how to refashion it.
Yeah, so he kind of he lightly buries the elf to kind of give him his final piece, keep his shrieking face from the shiver veil, and he kind of gives him a light burial. Not even has he encountered elves physically?
I would say that he has. Elves do exist in the Scourge. They don't have a kingdom. Their kingdoms are in the Fairlands, but there are elves in the Scourge. Typically the elves, though, that he's met have avoided him because elves don't particularly like giants that much.
Yeah, so he kind of gives it a kindness by burying it in the snow, and then he makes his way to the hammock.
The cold exhaustion in your bones starts dragging you on more strongly. The dark is waiting, and when it comes, it's not gentle. It slips over Skogul like a predator, wrapping its icy fingers around his mind, dragging him down into the depths. His body surrenders, but his thoughts cling to the edges of wakefulness, reluctant to fully succumb. Thoughts blur, swirling like frost-laden wind before you're slowly swallowed by the night. Sleep is not a release, and in that darkness, something stirs within you. Unseen, lurking just beyond the borders of your consciousness. It growls. What does Skogul dream of once sleep takes him?
I think he probably pictured that menacing wolf almost being at the helm of, or I guess the vanguard of those mechanical beasts. He's like merging the idea that the wolves have something to do with the technology he saw there, and he pictures them kind of suffocating him and drowning him, wrapping their arms around him and pulling him deeper into an icy river.
The following morning, as the sun creeps higher into the sky, your body feels the weight of exhaustion lift like melting dew. Your long rest is complete. The morning is yours.
Okay, so yeah, he'd like to go up to the entrance again, and I guess see if he can see them.
Definitely way too deep. Way too deep. It was like a 30-minute, not a 30-minute walk. It was probably like a 5-minute walk, like a 3-minute run, basically. Because I will say, because he did do a thorough study of the cave when he first initially got here, he sees that the language that is like scrawled along the cave walls is a different language than the one that is on the little stone tablet that he has. He doesn't recognize the one in the cave at all. He doesn't recognize the stone tablet one either, but he can understand a couple of those words at least. The one in the cave wall, he's like, I have no fucking clue what this is.
Gaining that impression of things, he's not convinced he's equipped to move forward. So he just says to himself, he goes, one task at a time. And he makes his way from the cave entrance to pick up the pelts. And and it's time to go. It's time to go back to Orlin. That's the way he's looking at it.
Once he has all of his gear packed up and he's got the pelts, is there anything he sort of does in this space before he leaves?
What he wants to do is just kind of break down the camp and kind of make it almost as if they were never there.
After he spends the morning cleaning up his camp and making sure that anybody who passed by this location wouldn't even think that a campsite had been set up here, Skogul moves on. And it doesn't take him long to realize that today's weather is a little bit different than yesterday's. You chew on some jerky made from last night's kills. The salty, gamey bite fuels you as you hike through the Eldergloom forest. The wood is still, almost eerily quiet, save for the sporadic groan of trees shifting under the weight of snow-covered branches. After a few hours, Skogul steps off the trail to relieve himself against the trunk of a frost pine. Roll insight for me, Steve.
12 plus 4, 16.
Something's watching you. Roll perception.
Oh boy. 13.
Okay. Skogul closes his pants back up and looks around. It takes a few moments, but eventually your gaze stalls on a nearby ridge. It's the sole surviving dire wolf pup. It stands just far enough away to avoid any arrows, but close enough for you to see that the creature's coat is matted with dried blood, where Skogul's arrow still sticks up from its back, buried deep in the muscle. Its eyes are wild and fierce, and it doesn't move. You watch its chest rising and falling rapidly, lingering pain obvious in every breath. For a long moment, the two of you stare at each other.
Yeah, so as Skogul is staring down this wolf that he tried to kill so many fucking times, he wants to see how long it's been following him.
I would say that he recognizes that it's definitely in the direction that he came from. So it probably has been following him all day and probably was watching him all night last night too.
The jerky that he ate, can we make sure that that was from, I guess, the remainder of that stag they killed?
Absolutely.
Okay. Oh man, I think there's like a glimmer of camaraderie in the sense that he realizes that that wolf is the last of his pack. Skogul can appreciate that. He goes into his pack and he pulls out some of that sweet choice venison and he leaves it on the ground before he moves away.
And when he does that, his aunt's voice whispers through his mind, "Mercy is a luxury for those who've never starved, Skogul."
Skogul kind of bites off that thought with a grimace. Without mercy, no one survives.
And as he stands up and looks towards the ridge, he sees that the last remaining wolf pup's breath comes in sharp, cold puffs. But it doesn't move toward you. Instead, with a low whine and a glance that's more pain than rage, the pup gives a mournful howl and then slowly limps over the ridge, vanishing beyond the snow and pine-dappled hill.
Oh, it goes away. But based off of what he can tell by how far away that wolf was, how far is he from that wolf?
Roll a perception for me.
22. Fantastic.
So, you're a ranger, so it's very easy for you to sort of gauge nature distance based off of just looking. And I would say that, like, you're looking at about a quarter of a mile.
Oh, wow. It's really close. Yeah, he puts some more jerky down.
As he reaches down to put more jerky on the ground, something beneath the snow shifts. Roll perception for me.
God damn it. We got snow worms. All right, 15 plus 4, 19.
That's good. The ground explodes in a flurry of snow and ice. A massive white-shelled beetle bursts from the earth with a screech, and its beautiful, chitinous body shimmers in the sunlight. Towering over Skogul, the Arctic beetle rears back on its legs, and you watch as its mandibles click and snap, sharp enough to cut through bone. Its eyes, cold and black, fixate on the pack of meat on your back, and it snarls as the jerky gets pushed aside on the ground. Describe how you avoid the initial attack, because you did succeed in that perception roll before we roll initiative.
Yeah, I think as he was leaning down, he felt a tremble underneath his feet, and knowing the way snow shifts after eons spent in it, he leaps backwards.
Roll initiative.
Here we go.
14. Okay, so you get to go first, buddy.
All right, yeah, I'd like to. Let's see, where are my weapons at? How do I see? All right, so spells, combat. Here we go. 18 plus 5, 23.
Its armor class is gonna be 12. So you fucking 100% hit. Roll that damage, bud.
Hell yeah, bro. 4.
Okay. It takes 4 damage. So
And then immediately upon doing that, he wants to sprint in the direction he was going. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, see if you can catch up.
Okay. It is now the Snow Beetle's turn. After Skogul runs off, he turns around and sees that like the giant Snow Beetle is essentially right on his tail. As he sprints off, it drops to the ground and just coming at him like through the trees. And he sees that as it's running along the ground behind him, it's dragging its claw across its underbelly, and it scrapes off like with a hooked talon a perfect snowball that you see is just like filled with like the detritus of like organs, and you see a couple fingers, and you see just rotten, nasty carrion meat, all just like rolled up within this snowball that it just whips right at your back as you're running away from it to try to knock you down.
Damn.
Go ahead and do a dexterity saving throw for me.
Oh, save?
Yeah, dude, hit the dexterity save. You want above a 12.
How's a 14?
Boom, son! On a success, you take half the damage and you're not poisoned. Okay.
Wow, this shit is poisonous. Dark, dude.
Okay, so I gotta roll a 2d6 and you take half damage.
Okay. Nat 6. Good job.
5. You take 5 damage from this thing. You're not poisoned by it, but it hits you hard enough that you feel like a rib cage just like crack into your own back, like along your own spine, like.
Okay.
And it is now your turn again, and it's just like.
Nice fucking bug. Piece of shit. I was just trying to have a good time.
This is shit he's used to. Like, this is the life he lives.
Yeah, that's so cool. So he's 5, 10, 15, 20. Yep, perfect. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna shoot that bow into his fucking face. Here we go. Oh, 18 plus 5. That's a 20.
That's a fucking hit, bud. Roll that damage.
Let's get some damage in that bitch. Oh my god, nat 4.
Well, I mean, hey, that's how much damage you did last time. You've done 8 damage so far.
I'm assuming there's stuff I can climb into. He would just like to like move away and up.
Okay, of course. So describe what he does.
I guess work with me. Let me know how close is the nearest.
He could go like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and he's at like the top of this tree.
Okay, I'll take it.
So it is going to try to throw another snowball at you to try to knock you out of the tree. So roll a dexterity save for me.
All right, dex save. 21, 16 plus 5.
It's going to do the snowball shove. So you would take 5.
Damn.
But it doesn't knock you out of the tree.
Okay, yeah, from my position, I'm gonna blast another arrow down on it. 4 plus 5, 9. It needs a 12, right?
Yeah, so that was a miss. So you trade volleys. Like the snowball flies through the air and hits Skogul. And he like almost falls out of the tree, but doesn't. He steadies himself on a branch, whips out his bow and arrow, fires back an arrow, and it just like right off of this thing's shell. And you watch like as its wings kind of just like.
Yeah, so is there anything behind me that I can like leap to or jump to gain more, I guess, distance from this thing?
I would say roll a perception for me.
6 plus 4, 10.
Yeah, there's 3 other probably good sized trees sort of near you that you could leap to that would give you another, 5 to 10 feet.
All right, yeah, I'd like to pick one of those and leap to it.
Okay, roll a acrobatics or an athletics for me, either one.
True, because now we're in the fucking sky.
Yup.
23.
Okay, well that's very successful.
20.
You're now 30 feet away from it as opposed to 15.
Amazing.
All right, so on his turn, it is going to take to the sky. You watch as its wings go, and it just like pop out from underneath the shell, and it starts to like lift up and flies right over to where you are. And as it's hovering right there within melee range on you, it tries to do a pincer with its claw as it like swoops down in you, and you're up in the tree, and it's like trying to like fucking snap at your arms to like cut the bow in half.
All right, what do I roll for that?
Well, it absolutely fails, and it is now hovering about 15 feet in the air, and you're, up in the tree.
All right, yeah, I guess if it's within grapple range, I'm going to... My first nat 1 of the night.
As Skogul sort of lets his short bow slide up his shoulder, he reaches down and pulls his hand axe from his hip and swings out and tries to do what with it?
I guess he tries to swing at the thing's face.
And when he tries to swing it up close to its face, it times in a way where the creature's claw just like dings back and knocks the hand axe back into Skogul's own face. Go ahead and roll a d4 for me.
D4, you said?
Yes.
2.
You take 2 damage.
Oh, good. That puts me down to 22.
Okay.
So once that happens, Skogul would like to, I guess, make his way down into the trees where the thing can't really fly.
Okay. Hit me with another acrobatics or an athletics for me.
8 plus 3, 11.
Very successfully, you're able to sort of like get down into like the meatier chunk of the tree where the limbs and the branches are much thicker and wider and longer. And it's out there still hovering. You can hear its wings just like... And it's like, it's trying to like slash through the branches to get at you. But it's a little bit harder for it now.
All right, that's turn.
Yeah, I'm just going to have it keep trying to do the pincer attacks right now because it's in the air. So it's not going to be chucking snowballs at you. That's another failure. It's the trees and the limbs are just too dense at this point. You're watching as it's trying to force its way in closer to get near you, and the trees are sort of like breaking and twisting and groaning as it's trying to break its way in.
Yeah, do I still have clear line of sight with the short bow?
You have clear line of sight, but there's trees and branches and stuff in the way as well.
So to fire at him would actually be disadvantaged at this point?
It would be, yes.
Is it hovering above in any way that I could get access to its soft underbelly?
You could absolutely move lower.
Okay, yeah, I'd like to try and move into its undercarriage and, plunge that sword right up into those guts.
Go ahead and roll an athletics for me. And I'm going to have it roll an athletics as well.
Okay.
So as you climb down, it sees you climbing down and definitely like sort of gets down a little bit below you.
Okay. All right. I'm going to try and leap above it and bury my sword in its carapace.
Hell yeah, dude. Go for it.
So what do you want? Acrobatics? Athletics?
I would say acrobatics for that one. You're leaping out of a tree to try to land. That's a success.
18 plus 3.
That's 21. A 21. That's a success, man.
All right, so he leaps out of the tree and he pulls his sword out high above his head like the sword of Damocles, and he just like jabs it downward.
Let's get you some advantage on that roll though.
Okay. There it is. Okay. And then here we go. So 13.
You needed a 12, remember? Its AC is 12.
Yep.
So roll the damage.
So here's the thing. I want to try and do this frost chill. It looks like I can just add it on top of my damage now that I've successfully attacked.
Go ahead and roll your damage.
Here comes short. All right, 3. That's it.
Okay, 3 damage.
And then I get to do 1d6 of frost damage that will slow it down by 10 feet. Oh, that's
okay. So it is resistant to cold damage. So you do not slow it down, and it takes half of that damage. So it takes 6 damage. But go ahead and describe how you successfully leap out of the tree, stab your fucking sword into this thing's back. You're riding it, bud.
He just leaps silently because he's almost embarrassed by the hand axe situation earlier. And he goes, "This one better not fail me," to himself. And he just slams into the backside of this thing. And once the sword has buried itself, he just holds on for dear life.
With you on its back, the snow beetle immediately flies down onto the ground and collides into the ground, and you both sort of start rolling through the snow as this ball of snow starts to pick up.
Uh-oh.
Roll an athletics check for me.
13 plus 7, 20. Yeah, once it starts rolling, Skogul recognizes the movement, knowing that this thing really loves to roll around. He dives free of it and lets it carry its momentum away from him.
It stops roughly about 15 feet from you, and you watch as it turns around with another rotten ball of snow, reeking of poison, and you know that if it infects you, you could very easily die out here without proper healing. So go ahead and roll a dexterity for me.
Dex save?
Yes, sir.
How's a 22?
All right, well, that is a success. So let me go ahead and roll a 2d6, and you're going to take half damage. So 5. So
Jesus.
as you see this rotten ball of snow soar through the air towards you, you see that embedded within it is definitely the skull of a gnome. It's small. At first you think it's a child's skull, but as it gets closer you see that there's a gold tooth, and it smashes into you.
The thing is, when the beetle burst out of the ground, it didn't bother trying to eat the jerky I left, right?
No, the jerky has been sort of scattered and covered by the snow.
Okay, honestly, it has way more hit points than me by a lot, so I'm kind of worried right now. I'd like to remove the pack full of the meat, like the satchel of meat, and yeah. So I want to find out just how interested in this meat it is. So he waves the carrion in front of the beetle.
Go ahead and roll an insight for me, or a nature, either one.
Let's do insight. 21, 17 plus 4.
It's definitely tracking the backpack.
Yeah, so once Skogul finds out that the beetle is interested, he holds it up and pulls a chunk of some of the meat out and stuffs it in his own little satchel. And instead of engaging the beetle directly, he very intentionally looks at the beetle and rests the larger portion of meat, and he splits it open so that it pops, and there's just all this dead animal tissue laying in front of him, and he wants to run.
The moment that he does that, it surges towards you.
Yep, so I want to take that movement and move 7 squares completely away.
So you watch as it spends its turn ravenously, just like completely devouring the meat that you leave down there on the ground. Roughly about 30 seconds if it just like tearing through it. So I will say it wastes an entire turn. It is your turn again.
Yeah, not today. He just basically moves away to disengage and disappear into the snow.
Go ahead and roll a, I would say, stealth then, right?
Yep. 10 plus 5, 15.
It has a passive perception of 10, so you succeed.
Yeah, I think as Skogul realizes how ravenous it is, knowing that it probably wouldn't get its fill off of that little pack, he's actually more concerned with completing his task than he is with fighting this thing to death. So he's like, yeah, not today.
Roll an insight for me.
You got it.
12, okay.
8 plus 4, 12.
As he stealthily makes his way through the trees to avoid this behemoth of a creature that has, for now, sort of left him behind, the snow beneath you shifts again, as Skogul realizes that another beetle has come up to join.
You son of a bitch.
The beetle lets out a shrill, piercing screech as smaller beetles, only as big as a full-sized wolf, swarm out from behind their hulking mother, which is twice the size of the male you've been fighting. Hungry and frantic, the mother beetle rears up, towering over Skogul with a murderous rage in its dark, hollow eyes. Roll initiative.
10.
All right, so this new one gets a 1. And the swarm around it, the little ones, get a 12. So they go first. Skogul is, as he's sort of stealthing away and caught off guard by this new surge of the rest of their hive, the little ones try to swarm across him and pin him to the ground.
Well, that fucking sucks.
So what's your AC? 13, right?
13, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so that was an 18.
Great.
The second one is going to be a 22. The third one is going to be a 14. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's 4 attacks, all hit.
These guys must have much lower damage.
So it's 6, 17, 27, 33 halved to 15 damage. And he is pinned to the ground as 5 of these wolf-sized baby snow beetles are just sort of like dogpiling and slashing down on him with their mandibles and claws.
Dude. Well, I'm down to 2 HP now and I'm pinned. Fuck. Okay. You said it was like 30, right?
No, it's 5.
Oh, 5 little dwarfies?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Damn. Yeah, what do I roll against a pin?
I would have it run under grapple rules. You're pinned by their weight. These things are like biting at your legs, biting at your belly, biting at your arms.
Yeah. I'm gonna roll to try and escape the pin.
Okay.
And ultimately try and leave the remainder of my meat where I was. So I can do an athletics, acrobatics, or dex roll. I think I'm gonna choose athletics. Come on, baby.
Go for it.
14 plus 7.
That's a success.
As soon as they surround him, his his wind just like leaves him, and he feels this like immediate sense of despair. And then he pictures his aunt, and what does she say to him in this moment?
As Skogul forces his way to his feet, he hears that same vicious, mocking tone filter through his ears. Fools stand their ground when the wise have fled. Don't be too proud or blind to run. If you're too weak to fight, or just die, I don't care.
Yeah, so Skogul winces once he gets to his feet, and he decides it's time to let go of the rest of that meat and drops it in the spot while he sprints 7 squares away.
Your heart skips a beat when the arrow's whistle cuts through the air. It embeds itself deep into the largest beetle's neck. Then another soars past you, and another. The winter beetle, the mother queen beetle, shrieks and turns away, distracted by the assault, switching her focus to protecting her young. As through the elder gloom, you see 5 figures sprinting through the dense trees towards you. The group moves with a strong urgency. All of their weapons are drawn, and they're clearly focused on the beetles. 2 elves leap over the snowdrifts with bows in hand, new arrows already nocked and ready for another strike. Beside them, a patchy-furred minotaur charges with a heavy battle axe raised high. A gnome rides on his shoulders, portly and balding. A crossbow is strapped to his wrist, and his eyes dart towards Skogul's pack of pelts as they join the fray. Finally, behind them all, lumbering through the snow with a roar, is a hulking bearfolk who charges in with claws at the ready. You watch the thick fur bristle around its neck as spittle shakes from its mouth in a loud, deafening roar. One of the elves darts past Skogul, panting slightly as she readies another arrow. "Looked like you could use a hand." Both elves let loose their arrows, while the bearfolk barrels forward, slamming its claws into one of the smaller beetles, sending it flying into the snow.
I mean, this is literally the most people he's ever seen in years. Yeah, and they're pretty adept. He's kind of, he's a little bit dazed.
The second elf, the male elf, goes first, followed by the bearfolk, followed by the female elven ranger, followed by the minotaur and the gnome. Oh my goodness, that guy. Well, literally the male elf just rolled a natural 20. Crit damage. You watch as he, so she runs by you and says that, and he runs by your other side and, slides on his knees and runs up, this log and, leaps into the air and, shoots 2 arrows and then sticks into the beetle's, the mother queen beetle's wings. So neither of her, or, the joints where her wings would normally pop out, so she's unable to, release them, and she takes 12 damage. As the elf gets that natural 20 and strikes the mother beetle's wings, you see as the bearfolk is just roaring at the top of its lungs as it's swinging this warhammer with a two-handed attack. It's got it raised above its head and charges like past you, and it looks like it's about to try to swing the hammer down and try to crush this beetle's skull in.
Come on, Bearfolk.
It got a 20, so that's a success. It wasn't a natural 20, but it was a 20. Let's roll damage. It's going to be 6 damage. So he brings it down, and the bug kind of like turns at the last second, pivots, and it just cracks like a big chunk out of its shell. And at this point, the father beetle has finished eating the remains that Skogul left on the ground for it, and has turned its attention to sort of like realize something is going on over there because its queen has released pain pheromones. The Minotaur screams, "Everybody get out of the way!" as like literally shoves between Skogul, knocking him to the side, and like pushes the female elf away as well, drops down, and its horns just like go directly past Skogul's chest. Like if he had been like 1 foot to the left, or this Minotaur had not pushed him out of the way, like giving him a kind service, he would have been ripped open by this thing. It comes running through the trees, smashes through this like old, rotten, dead, frost-covered, sort of torn down tree. Just splinters fly through like the night air as its horns go right towards this beetle's face. 14. It has a 12 AC, so that's a hit. Let's roll damage. That's going to be 12 damage. So this thing is still alive, but it cannot attack. It cannot move because the Minotaur's horns have pierced into its face, and Skogul is watching as the queen matron, winter beetle, just starts thrashing its body around, and the swarm around it just all like lift up into the air like there are these dog-sized winter beetles just like lifting up into the air as the father just like smashes through the tree line. It's Skogul's turn.
Oh man, I mean, he's not going to try and draw attention to himself. What can I do to heal myself?
If you don't have any healing poultices, nothing.
Things are pretty rough here, so he's definitely not going to engage. I guess he'll shout at his new companions. Appreciate the help, but does anyone have any poultice?
Beside him, Sayla rummages through her pouch and pulls out this like leather net. It looks like something would have been found maybe like a fishing village, and it's just like kind of like filled with mud and what looks like maybe like chunks of hair and dried berries, and there's some kind of like sort of bioluminescent mushroom laced within it that's been like mixed together and like mushed around with it. And she goes, "Rub this on the wound, it'll get you back in fighting shape." And then she like charges after the rest of her group into the fray.
Yeah, so with the rest of his turn, he's not even going to question it. He's just going to start rubbing it all over him.
Roll a d20 for me. All right, so he takes 8 points of hit points back.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, so he's up to 10, right?
Mm-hmm.
The beetle is going to attack. Father beetle is going to chuck a rotten snowball at the bearfolk, obviously. It has to. Oh, wow. 2 damage, so he takes 1 hit point. Oh, the gnome never attacked. You watch when that happens as the gnome shouts, "Wardrock, get out of the way!" and like stands up off of the Minotaur's shoulders and like leaps through the air and like just puts this blow dart to his lips and starts shooting poison darts down at all of the little smaller winter beetles.
He's agile for a gnome. A fat gnome.
He is agile for a fat gnome. All right, so he does 4 damage to one, 5 damage to another, but he poisons both of them. The ones that he poisons both sort of like fly like lazily off into the forest, like away from you guys, and definitely sort of like shrinks the group down. You're going to watch as that first elf who rolled the natural 20 whips over his longbow towards the like charging Papa Beetle and fires it right into its face. He hits. Let's roll damage. And this is the one that you brought down to 31 hit points. He did 10 damage. It's down to 21 hit points.
Yeah, dude, these guys fucking slay.
Then the female elf next to you is going to basically like just walk very casually right up next to the male elf, raise her bow silently, and try to shoot at the same thing or shoot back at the Papa Beetle in the same direction that he did. And she goes, "That was a good shot, but watch this," and then lets it go. It's a 24. That's very much a hit. Let me roll damage on that. And again, it's down to 21. She just did 12 damage. So Skogul watches as these two elves basically just line up and do 22 damage back to back. Like, boom, boom. And the two arrows just pierce into Papa Beetle's upper chest joints to make it so like you watch as its pinchers just slow down and get sluggish. But it like still keeps kind of like moving in closer. The bear folk is going to use that same Warhammer attack, and since the Minotaur is like locked in position with the Queen Matron, Wardrock, the bear folk, is going to just two-handed weapon that Warhammer down. He's going to bring it down on these three remaining smaller beetles. 22, that's a hit. His second attack is going to be a 14, that's a hit, and then his action surge is going to be an 18. So that's 3 hits. The damage combined from those 3 hits are 13, 21, 34. Skogul watches as the bear folk just brings the Warhammer down over his head, smashes down on one of the smaller ones, and just completely like cleaves its entire like face off of the beetle's body. Body just drops into the snow, and there's 2 of the smaller beetles left. As it is the Minotaur's turn. Okay, so it's in gore mode, so it's gonna stay in gore mode. You're gonna watch as the Minotaur goes, "Wardrick, take out its leg. I'm pushing this thing back." And you watch as the Minotaur's hooves dig deep into the snowy earth, and with the surge, it just pushes with its horns deeper into this matron beetle's body, and you hear the like of the carapace around its skull like fracturing as he's like pushing in as he's pushing its head into its own body.
That's fucking metal.
That's a 23 to hit, so that's a success. Let me roll damage. That's gonna be an 11 damage. So you watch as the Minotaur keeps pushing, and the matron's body just has nowhere left to go because its carapace shell has been pushed up against these thick, dense crystal pine trees, and it's just as its face just collapses and caves into its own chest cavity, and just this goopy, thick liquid just pours out of the hole, this pale, pus-like consistency as the Minotaur like pulls his head out like tastes like sweet cream cheese, and then like he punches his like hand like into the open neck hole and like reaches in and then just rips out the interior spine of this thing and throws it onto the ground, shakes his hand off. When the gnome lands on the ground directly next to the Papa Beetle, you watch him put the blow dart into his pocket. On his other pocket, he's got this holster, like a gun holster. And he pulls out this like little war pick and spins it around in his hand, and like swings it sideways to try to like dig the pointy end into like one of the appendages on its legs to bring it down a little bit. That's a 23, which is a successful hit. Yeah, so he does 5 damage and cripples it. You watch as the Papa Beetle's back leg just like collapses under the weight, and it drops down to the ground and just. And I believe it is now Skogul's turn.
All right, yeah, Skogul's back. He wants to stand up.
He feels all of his like wounds and bruises tingling. Like think of like what hydroperoxide. It's like this like sharp, bitter like tingling across like all of the chunks of missing parts of his body and the cuts and scrapes.
He kind of shrugs it off, steels himself, and is like, to himself, he's like, I have to be more useful than this. He levels his arrow at the Papa Beetle and looses. 4 + 5, 9, nothing.
Well, would you like to use your last remaining luck?
Sure. So that's advantage?
Yeah, you can roll again, and with its advantage, and you have to take the new one. So if you get lower than 9. Oh, well, that's a success. So go ahead and roll your damage.
4.
How would you like to kill this thing?
I mean, he just kind of like sighs in himself, and he's just like upset at this simple amount. I mean, the huge amount of meat that he gave up. And as he watches this crippled beast, he goes, "You should have left well enough alone. Loose."
And you watch as the arrow zips between the two elves, over the gnome's head, and right into the Papa Beetle's face, burying itself between its eyes. And it just kind of stands there for a moment, shuddering, unmoving. Drops to the ground dead. At that point, you watch the Minotaur and the bear just go to town on the remaining two smaller beetles. The Wardrick, the bear, crushes him with his warhammer, and the Minotaur pulls out this great axe that's been on its back the entire time and just like starts swinging it down to like chop into everything there. They're just cutting everything up. It's just like chaos fest of blood and gore. It's just like spraying through the air all around them. They're laughing, having just the best fucking time.
Amazing.
After the last remaining small beetle sizzles and pops to the ground, and you watch as its legs just shudder and die, you hear the bear folk go, "Now that was a fight." And he like strides forward beside the carcass of the Papa Beetle, because there's not really anything left of the Mother Beetle's face. And he kneels down to examine its mandibles, and he goes, "Look at the size of these biters. Jump a limb right off, that'll do it." And he like grabs one of the beetle's severed legs and gives it a nice tug. And then a slow grin spreads across his face, and he goes, "Wardak's gonna want a trophy from this. Yes, he is." Wardak stands and turns the leg in his hands and pulls out a hatchet and starts chopping as his rolling belly laughter fills the space around you.
He stands and he tries to assess, like, I guess, who the leader is.
Go ahead and roll I would say, insight for me.
Yeah, he just got a 7.
I would say that, honestly, it's too fresh for him to have any kind of understanding of, like, the group's power structure. The only person who has really, like, spoken to him directly is the female elf, Selah, who has silver hair and gave you that sort of, like, Fisher Pack poultice.
I guess he kind of walks up to her. "I probably wouldn't have survived without you all, but you especially."
"You were well fought. We saw what you could do before we arrived. You really held your own there for a moment." When you're towering over her by a good 4 feet. She is this beautiful elf with like long silver hair and piercing blue eyes that are large and almond shaped and sitting, right atop like a teeny tiny little cute nose. She's like a perfect elf. She looks up at you with this like warm and friendly smile and says, "We were just going to let you handle things alone until that second beetle popped up." And then she like kind of strides forward and like puts her bow down by her side and she says, "I'm Selah." And before you can respond, the Minotaur steps into view, wiping just goo and blood and mucus off of his face and the blade of his axe. His size alone demands attention. He's also big. He's not as big as you or the bear, but he's big. His horns are, up there. He's got this big, wide grin, and he goes, "Warwick," and extends a large hand towards you. "You fought well."
Skogul kind of like looks down at the massive Minotaur hand covered in goo, and he shakes it and he goes, "Not well enough."
"You're alive, aren't you?"
"Not by my own hand." And yeah, Skogul, he kind of looks around at everyone. What's everyone else doing?
Wardrock, the bear, is still chopping pieces off of the Papa Bear to like add to his collection. You don't see the gnome anywhere. The second elf, the male elf, is picking his arrows out of the bodies and cleaning the arrowheads. Selah's standing right there in front of you. The Minotaur is standing right there in front of you.
Yeah, I guess as he's looking around, he's more curious about how all these different races came together. And as he's like checking in on everyone, kind of seeing what everyone's doing, realizing that they're all like totally friends, he goes, "You all chose this life."
Selah goes, "No more than anyone else did."
"Fair enough. I certainly didn't. I am Skogul."
"Well, Skogul, it's nice to meet you." And then the second elf speaks. You're lucky we were passing through.
Passing through or stalking?
We weren't stalking you, friend. You're just lucky. Don't mind Shidara. The only gratitude he cares about is plated in gold. And then, like, a chuckle, like, kind of cuts through their group, and your eyes flick to the small, wiry gnome who, like, appears out of the bushes, like, fiddling with his crossbow. And when he sees you, he takes a step back and he goes, "How goes it, giant? It's quite the pack you've got there on your back. Those are dire pelts, yeah?"
Remnants of a task that you have all allowed me to complete.
The silver-haired chick goes, "It's rare to find someone traveling out here alone. Most are smart enough to stay near the towns. You're a hunter, then? A ranger, I take?"
Guilty as charged.
"I've always said one can smell its own." And she, like, kind of does, like, a little curtsy with you. "The wild called me at a very young age."
And he just chuckles and he goes, "The wild never stopped calling me."
"Now that you're not going to be beetle dinner, where is it that you're headed?" At that point, the gnome, like, cops a squat on the ground, and you watch as he sort of, like, starts gathering to, like, make, like, a little fire. But then, sort of around him, the minotaur and the bear folk start gathering the beetles, and you watch as they start, like, prying off the shell carapace of their body, like, just breaking it off.
Yeah, and Skogul just goes, "I'm off to pay a debt."
And the gnome goes, "Is that what the pelts are for?"
You're an observant little one.
Observant enough to think that if you're one for paying debts, you kind of owe us one too. Seeing as how, we just saved your life and all. And, like, the male elf chuckles, and the bear folk just kind of, like, looks over at you and smiles and says, "It was our pleasure." And then the minotaur goes, "Yeah, absolutely. Any reason to kill a bug."
Yeah, and Skogul kind of like, he like has like a gleam in his eye in a way because he goes, two things can be true at once.
"How much you planning on charging for those pelts when you get back to town?"
I don't know. What do you call market rate?
"Between friends, well, I'd call it free."
Yeah, upon him saying that, he kind of like looks around and gauges like where everyone's
They're
at.
all looking at you.
Do they seem like mischievous? Do they seem thievy? Do they seem dark?
Roll a insight.
11.
I would say that you don't feel any direct ominous threat from any of them, but you are aware that if this turns into a fight, you would lose.
Are we saying that free is the debt?
I'm not saying anything, friend. You give freely. We're out here helping people. And then he does, like, a little bow, and the male elf just goes, "He's telling you to give him one of the pelts."
Yeah, so he chuckles and he goes, "Just one?"
The bear goes, "Well, we'll take them all if you don't want them."
I said it plainly. I need these for a debt. Maybe once that debt is confirmed, you can have your pelts.
We're happy to take gold, too, if you got some of that. What else you got on you?
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't have much. Is it so important that we settle this now?
The Scourge is a big place, friend. I've lived a long time without ever seeing your face. If you just run off into the trees, well, all this talk about you being about debts and paying them back kind of just disappears on the wind now, don't it? Sayla, the silver-haired elf girl, is like, "I'd be happy with a promise, but it's not my group." And she kind of looks over at the gnome.
The most important thing to him is not currency in the situation. It's like the indicators that it's the right wolf group, right? So I guess because he's so good at what he does, did he skin these pelts like so cleanly that like we can make out their like faces and heads, or no?
I would say roll a nature check for me.
All right.
He's not great at skinning. It's never been something that he was particularly fond of.
So they're good for resale, but they're not good for identification.
Pretty much.
Yeah, so he kind of looks down and he goes, "Any value these were had, you have more than tripled their worth to me." And he just like throws the pelts down at the gnome's feet.
All of them?
All of them.
Okay. The gnome looks down at the pack of pelts and then back up at Skogul with a surprised look on his face. He's not used to people being that generous for saving their lives. A couple silver, maybe a gold here. All he wanted was one pelt, but to offer him all of the pelts is definitely something that this entire group is taken note of. They're all looking at you, as they were, but the vibe in the grove that you stand in has changed slightly. As the gnome steps over towards the pack, kneels down, runs his hand along the soft, svelte, dire fur, confirming it is what he thought it was, walks past the pack and reaches up a tiny little hand towards Skogul and says, "The name's Grimble Steel Sprocket, rogue and thief extraordinaire. That was quite a gesture, friend. Here I thought we might just have to take your word for it that you were a good person."
Skogul kind of like leans down and gives him like one little finger, and he goes, "I don't think yet you can call me a good person."
Well, that's good to know, pal, because none of us are either. And all of them just like kind of like break into a laugh, and you watch the male elf pick up the pack of pelts and sling it across his back, as those now belong to this group, unless you have some kind of inkling of taking it back.
No, he doesn't care. It doesn't mean anything to him.
As the male elf goes, "Generous of you to share your hard-earned spoils, friend."
Yeah, he just goes, "Not as hard earned as my life this day."
And Warrock says, "We don't usually turn down gifts, especially when they come wrapped up so nicely, but I gotta wonder, what's the catch?"
Catch? The word is debt, and it is paid.
At that point, Grimble the gnome smiles, and he goes, "Fair enough. We'll call it even for now." Kind of goes, "But you know, debts have a funny way of stacking up, so if you ever find yourself needing to square another one off, well, we're always nearby." And he like kind of hands you this little business card. It says, the front of the card says, "The Wild Company, adventurers, protectors, and hunters of the wild."
Fun.
And then on the back it says, "Services offered: monster hunting, wilderness protection, escort and security, and treasure recovery.
Hilarious.
Leave your problems to us. We'll take care of everything." Make sure not to lose that. I've only got 10 left.
Oh, he just chuckles. "The wild has no use for cards. How do I find you?"
Sayla, the silver elf, kind of like sidles up beside Skogul and like reaches into her pouch and pulls out a smaller, like a small little pack, another like fisherman's pack poultice, and hands it to him. And she says, "We have a bastion in Bloodmuck. You can find us there, or at least leave notifications for us."
He grabs the poultice, he looks down at her, and then he kind of like turns away and already starts walking, and he goes, "May the wild keep you."
And so as he turns to sort of walk away, she says, "And if the wilds grow too harsh, may nature guide you back to us." Warwick the Minotaur like snorts this like huff and like crosses his arms. He just like watches you like leave. And he goes under his breath, kind of like, "With how he fights, the wild might chew him up before he makes it too far." And then like the bear folk just kind of like punches him in the shoulder, and he goes, "Hey, shush, he can hear you. Giants are known for their vendetta. Don't let him hear you talking shit about you."
Yeah, I think Skogul probably did hear them say that. At this point, he's actually not in a position to feel offended by it.
Finally, Wargak the bear, like raises up his arm as he like rips the last of the beetle's legs free, and he goes, "Hope the wild doesn't eat you alive, little giant." And then he like bites the raw beetle meat out of the inside of the leg, rips it off. And as Skogul continues his path off towards Orland's house, what is he thinking and or feeling in this moment?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's got pretty decent spirits. The simple fact that he met some people that didn't immediately try and kill him gives him a little bit of hope for the kind of people he may meet in the future.
And I think that we're going to go ahead and wrap up tonight with the end of part 2 of Skogul's origin story, as we leave the door open for part 3 of his origin story, which will be the final part before the group gets together, which I believe will be chapter 0.7, I think, of the origins arc here that we've got, and we'll wrap all of this up on that bit. And
Dope.